Have you ever given up hope on something? Like maybe you were working really hard because that promotion was coming up. So you worked longer hours, even if it meant sacrificing time from your family. You took on extra projects, you took initiative, you built the relationships that needed to be built. And then when the time came for the promotion, it went to someone else. Maybe you got that health diagnosis that is causing you stress and worry and fear. But the doctors are telling you that you need to try not to stress so much because it's only making everything worse. Whatever it is that you might be going through, that you are tempted to give up on faith. You want to believe that things can get better. You want to believe that God can still intervene and do miraculous things. You want to have the kind of faith that the Bible talks about, that if you have faith the size of a mustard seed, a tiny little seed, that if you have that much faith, you'll be able to move mountains. Now, for most of us, we don't want to move mountains. We simply want God to answer our prayers. We simply want God to bring health and healing. We want God to help us get that promotion. We want God to help to reconcile relationships in our lives. We want God to give us mental health, physical health. For many of us, we still want to hold on to the belief that God can still do impossible things. You know, so much of the times our faith is built not when we get everything that we want, not when everything is going well, but oftentimes faith is built in our lives when God says no, when we don't get the things that we think we want. Faith is built in the moments even when failure happens, even when we don't get everything we want, we can still keep on believing that God still desires our very best. Today, I want to just take a few moments and look at a passage in the Bible that I hope will give you the hope and the persistence you need as you continue to go through things. So I'm going to be reading from a few verses from the book of Habakkuk. It's a small little book in the Old Testament. If you blink, you'll miss it. But in this context, what's happening is that the children of Israel were experiencing these attacks from these neighboring enemies and foes, and they would come and pillage the city, and then they would take what they wanted and they would leave, and they would come back and do this. And so this was happening time and time again. And so Habakkuk was a prophet. He was the one that was connected to God. Him and God were close. They had these conversations. And so Habakkuk comes to God, and for a whole chapter and a half, he says, God, do you not see what's happening to your people? Do you not see the pain and the violence and the pillaging and the raiding and the death? God, do you not see? Have you fallen asleep? What's going on? God, can you send help? And so Habakkuk then says in chapter 2, verse 1, after he complains to God, he says the following words: I will stand on my guard post and station myself on the rampart, and I will keep watch to see what he will speak to me and how I may reply when I am reproved. So in the ancient world, these cities had walls and they had guard posts or ramparts, places where watchmen would go up and keep an eye out so that when the enemy came, they would be able to sound a horn, ring a bell, let everybody know the enemy is coming, get ready, pick up a sword, pick up an axe, pick up some stones. Let's get ready to defend ourselves. And so Habakkuk is actually using the language of the day, and he is saying, look, I'm not going to look for the enemy. Because it's so easy for us when we focus on negative things in our lives to only see more negative things happening. That's just a normal part of our lives. But Habakkuk says, look, I'm going to keep watch. I'm going to be on the lookout to hear what God is about to say to me. He's making a mindset shift from only looking at the negative and looking for the enemy, but instead saying, God, I am going to wait on you because I know that you will speak. I know that you are going to speak the word that I need into my life. And I love this because Habakkuk says, I see everything that's going on around me, and it's not good news. But I'm not going to give up hope. I'm not going to give up belief that God can still deliver. And he goes on in verse 2, then the Lord answered me and said, record this vision and inscribe it on tablets, that the one who reads it may run. Now, those are ominous words. God finally speaks to Habakkuk and he says, all right, what I'm about to say, I want you to write this down, because what I'm going to tell you is going to happen. And when those who read it, if they're smart, they're going to run. So in essence, God was about to tell Habakkuk what was going to happen. This evil band, these soldiers called the Chaldeans, were going to come and ultimately upend all of the village. And it wasn't that God was doing this. God was simply saying, look, this is what's going to happen. So for those who read this, may they run. Now that's not good news. That is not something we want to hear. But what God is doing here is showing not only them, but showing us today that bad things sometimes happen in our lives. And we won't always get the answer as to why these things are happening to us. You won't always get that promotion. Your marriage won't always be saved. You won't always get the answer on your health diagnosis. You won't always get the desired end for your children. There will be things in this life, on this earth, that are not always going to make sense. And God is saying, look, that's all, unfortunately, a normal part of human existence on this fallen earth. But then God says in verse 3, for the vision is yet for the appointed time. It hastens toward the goal, and it will not fail. Though it tarries, wait for it will certainly come, and it will not delay. So God is speaking to these people, and he's giving them a word of hope, because he will go on to say in this vision that Habakkuk is about to write, yes, the Chaldeans are going to come, and yes, you will run and you will lose things, but then God will respond and deliver his people. God will ultimately provide for his people. Against evil in this world, God will provide what we need. And so God says to Habakkuk, look, listen, at the appointed time, I will ultimately come and deliver you. I will speak into your life. I will give you strength. I will give you hope. I will answer your prayers. And he says, it hastens toward that time. It will not fail. I promise you, as I give you my word, I will come and deliver. And he says, though it tarries, which is a biblical word of saying, though it feels like it's taking forever for me to answer you. It's going to feel like I have forgotten you. It's going to feel like I've fallen asleep on you, but I promise at the appointed time, I will come, and it will certainly come. And he says, it's not going to delay. My appointed time may feel like a delay to you, but I promise that it's not a delay on my end. It's that at the appointed time, then I will respond and act. I wonder what would change in your life if instead of looking only on the negative things that are happening, instead of focusing on the lack of joy, on the lack of health, on the lack of finances, if you, like Habakkuk, began to look for how God is going to answer your prayers instead. So I want to invite you, as we bring this to a close, to have a slight mindset shift. That instead of thinking, man, when are things ever going to get better? Are things only going to get worse? It goes from bad to worse and even worse. If you have that mindset, I want to encourage you to change that mindset and follow this few words. It's on its way. God's word, God's hope, God's strength, God's answer to your prayer is on its way. It's not going to tarry. It's not going to delay. God has not fallen asleep, but instead, in the moment of our waiting, we can use those moments to cling closer to God and allow our faith to grow and flourish and bloom, so that when God's appointed time for the thing you're waiting for happens, you will be ready to receive it. Because I will say this, that so often when God delivers in our lives, it looks different than what we've been praying for. It looks different than what we've been asking for. And sometimes we miss it because we're so intent on seeing it the way we want it to happen. But in the moments of your waiting, remember it's on its way, and use that time to get closer to God so that you won't miss it when lightning strikes. God bless you.